Chosen one, I need you to hear this, not with your mind first, with your spirit. Because what I am about to tell you is not information. It is a word, and there is a difference. Information enters through the ear and stops at the brain. A word enters through the ear and travels all the way down into the place where you have been quietly aching. That place you rarely talk about. That space inside you where the unanswered prayers live, where the years that did not go the way you believed they would have been sitting in silence, waiting for an explanation. Tonight, I carry that explanation, so let your spirit open. Let the part of you that has been guarded, and it has been guarded because it has been wounded, let it open just enough to receive what was sent for you, because what was sent for you is specific, not general. Not a word for everyone who happens to be watching. This word was held until this moment, until you were in the exact condition you are in tonight, until the part of you that needed to hear it was ready to receive it in a way that could change something. Stay for all of it, because the part you are most tempted to skip is the part that was written for your particular wound. I want to start with something that might surprise you. God was not moved by your best moments. He was not most drawn to you when you had the right words in prayer, when your faith felt strong, when your worship was full and your heart was clear. He was most moved by the moments no one saw, the nights you cried into a pillow so no one in the next room would hear. The mornings you sat in your car before going inside somewhere because you needed a moment to collect yourself before you could function. The prayers you prayed that were not eloquent, that were barely even words, that were just a sound, a breath, a groan that carried more weight than any sentence you could have constructed. Those moments, the ones you consider your weakest, are the ones that moved heaven most. And I need you to understand why, because this is not a poetic statement, it is a theological one. When a person is performing for God, heaven sees performance. It receives it, but it reads through it. It knows the difference between what is offered for an audience and what is offered from the marrow. But when a person is broken open before God, no presentation, no pretense, no carefully arranged words, no spiritual language deployed to make the prayer sound more worthy, heaven sees the real person. And it is the real person that God has been pursuing. Not the version you show on Sunday, not the version you offer when people you want to impress are watching. Not even the version of you that shows up when you feel spiritual and strong. The version that cries in private. The version that does not have the energy to manage how it looks. The version that just comes broken and says, I do not have anything else. That version of you is deeply, specifically, irreversibly loved. And that version of you is the one this word is for tonight. Now, let me tell you what God was doing while you were in those private moments. Every tear was recorded. I know that sounds like poetic language, but I mean it more literally than it sounds. Psalm 56:8, and I want to give you the full weight of this verse, says that God puts your tears in a bottle. In some translations, it says he records them in a book. This is covenant language. In the ancient world, you did not record something unless it had legal significance. You did not preserve something unless it was going to be referenced again. You did not put something in a bottle, sealed, unless it was going to be opened later for a reason. God was not watching your pain passively. The way we scroll past something difficult on a screen, he was documenting it, preserving it, storing it in a way that indicated this will be used again. This matters. This is not the end of this story. Every tear had weight. Every night of crying in private was an investment you did not choose to make. No one chooses to suffer, but an investment nonetheless. And what has been invested must produce a return. I need you to understand something about the way God operates. He is not moved by the length of your suffering, the way we are moved by it. We look at someone who has suffered long, and we feel pity. We think, that is so unfair. Someone should do something. God looks at someone who has suffered long, and he calculates, not coldly, not without compassion, but with the precision of a father who knows exactly what is being accumulated, and exactly what it will produce, and exactly when the return needs to arrive for maximum impact. Your suffering was never pointless. Your suffering was being measured, and measured suffering, in the economy of heaven, produces measured restoration. The longer it went, the larger the return. That is not a comfortable thing to say, and I am not saying God caused your pain for the sake of the return, but I am saying that nothing in your life escaped his attention. Nothing was wasted in his hands, and the accumulation of private grief that you have been carrying has been building toward a moment of such specific and personal restoration that when it arrives, you will not be able to explain it to people who did not see what you went through, because it will be calibrated to the exact shape of your loss. Not a general blessing poured out on everyone in the vicinity. An answer that fits the question. A restoration that matches the wound. A return that addresses specifically and personally what was taken. God does not deal in approximations with the people he loves. And he loves you. Now, I want to talk about the people who saw you at your lowest and made a judgment, because there were some people who watched you struggle and drew conclusions. People who were in your life for a season and left when the season got difficult, which told you something about why they were really there. People who spoke words over you, some to your face, some behind your back, that suggested you were less than you knew yourself to be. People who confused your season with your identity. Your difficult season was not your identity. And I want to address something that happens to people who spend a long time in a difficult season. After a while, the season starts to feel like the definition. You stop saying, I am going through a hard time, and you start saying, this is just my life. That shift, that moment, when the temporary gets classified as permanent, is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a person's faith. Because the moment you accept that this is just how things are for you, you stop expecting anything different. And when you stop expecting anything different, you stop positioning yourself to receive it when it comes. Let me be more specific about how this happens. The shift is almost never conscious. It does not arrive as a decision. It arrives as an accumulation. One disappointment does not produce it, but the fifth disappointment, the 9th, the 15th, each one slowly adjusting what you allow yourself to expect. Eventually you arrive somewhere you never intended to be, a place where hoping feels dangerous, where believing feels naïve, where the protective layer of not expecting too much feels like wisdom, when it is actually the wound talking. I am interrupting that agreement tonight. What you have been living is a season, a long season. Yes, a painful season. Yes, a season that has marked you, changed you, cost you things you cannot get back. Yes, but a season, and seasons change. Not because of the weather, not because of luck, not even because you finally did the right thing or prayed the right prayer. Seasons change because God has an appointed time, and the appointed time for your season of waiting is coming to its end. I was shown something in the spirit, and I need to describe it carefully because the image matters. I saw a field, and the field had been covered for a long time. Not by anything natural, by something that had been placed over it deliberately. A covering that blocked the light, blocked the rain, blocked the growth. And underneath that covering the seeds were still in the ground. Dormant, waiting, not dead. The difference between a dormant seed and a dead seed is that a dormant seed is waiting for the right conditions. It is not producing anything. It does not look like anything, but the life is still in it. And then I saw the covering being pulled back, and what happened underneath was not gradual. Seeds that have been dormant under pressure do not grow slowly when the pressure is removed. They burst. Growth that was supposed to happen over years compressed into a season of rapid, almost disorienting fruitfulness, because the seed did not stop accumulating potential just because it could not grow. The potential was building the entire time. It had nowhere to go, and when the restriction was removed, it went all at once. This is the image I was given for your life. The covering is being removed. What was dormant? The gifts, the opportunities, the relationships, the resources, the purposes, none of it died. It was waiting under pressure, and now the pressure is being relieved. Do not be surprised when things begin to move faster than feels normal. Do not explain it away. Do not tell yourself it cannot possibly be this good. When seeds that have been waiting burst, they burst. Receive it at the pace it comes. I want to speak now about the private prayers, not the public ones, not the ones you prayed in church, in community. When someone was listening, the ones you prayed alone, the requests you carried to God in the quiet hours when the house was still and the weight was heaviest. The things you asked for that you have never told anyone you asked for, because to tell someone would have been to risk the embarrassment of them not coming to pass. So you kept them between you and God, just you and Him. Some of those prayers were about people. Someone you love who is in a situation that has frightened you, someone whose pain you would trade places with them to relieve if you could. Some of those prayers were about yourself, but the version of yourself you are afraid to want for yourself. The life you can picture but are almost afraid to pray for too specifically, in case hoping for it too precisely makes the loss worse if it does not come. So you held the vision loosely. You kept it at arm's length. You let yourself believe in it only enough that you could recover if it did not happen. And yet it kept coming back. The vision, the desire, the thing you tried not to want too much. It kept surfacing because it was placed there. Not by your own ambition, by the one who knew what you were made for. Desire of that persistence is not wishful thinking. It is the calling announcing itself. Heaven heard every one of those prayers, including the ones you could not finish, including the ones where you ran out of words and just sat there, including the ones you prayed and then immediately second-guessed. Those prayers are in the bottle. They are recorded. They are being answered. Not all at once. Not always in the form you expected, but specifically, personally, with knowledge of every detail of what you meant when you prayed. Because God does not receive your prayers and have to guess at your meaning. He receives them with full knowledge of what was behind the words, full knowledge of the fear underneath the request, full knowledge of the hope underneath the fear, full knowledge of the history that made you need that particular thing so badly, and He answers with full knowledge. The answers that are coming are going to be specific. They will match what you prayed, and sometimes they will exceed it, because God answers not just what you asked, but what you would have asked if you had known you could ask it. Let me say something about the specific shape of what is coming, because I think we do people a disservice when we speak only of restoration in abstract terms, when we say breakthrough without describing what breakthrough looks like in the areas of life that have been under pressure. Let me be specific. For those of you who have been under financial pressure, and I know some of you have been under it for longer than anyone around you, knows the restoration coming is not a trickle. It is not a small adjustment that barely closes the gap. It is a shift, the kind of shift that does not just address the immediate need, but repositions you entirely. Deuteronomy 8:18 says God gives you the power to produce wealth, to establish his covenant. The power to produce, not a handout, not a one-time provision that runs out. The capacity, the anointing, the supernatural ability to produce provision in ways you have not been able to access before, that power has been suppressed in this season. The financial pressure was not just an inconvenience. It was a strategy designed to keep your mind in survival mode so it could not expand into the vision and creativity that the power to produce actually requires. The suppression is ending. What you will be able to do in this next season, the ideas that will surface, the opportunities that will form, the connections that will open doors will not look like what you have been able to do before. Because you will not be operating from the same source. You will be operating from the power. The God-given, covenant established, cannot explain it any other way power. Watch for it. It is already activating. For those of you whose greatest grief has been relational, the restoration coming is not just the removal of the wound. It is the arrival of what the wound made space for. Some of the relationships that ended could not have ended without leaving you in a specific condition, specifically available, specifically open, specifically recognizable to someone who would not have been able to find you if the previous person were still occupying the space. The one who is coming, and for some of you, the connection is already closer than you think, is not a replacement for what was lost. They are something the loss made possible. Someone who recognizes what you carry because they carry the same kind of weight, who has been through their own preparation, their own silent season, their own private tears. And when two people who have both been through that kind of refining find each other, what forms between them is not the fragile thing that breaks under pressure. It is the thing that was forged in pressure. And forged things do not break easily. For those whose grief has been about purpose, the fog is clearing. Not all at once, not in a single download that arrives overnight, but in the way a sky clears after a long rain gradually, then suddenly until the clarity seems obvious, and you wonder how the fog ever made the path invisible. Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, plans for welfare and not for evil, plans to give you a future and a hope. The plans were not cancelled by the difficult season. The plans were not revised because the timeline extended. The plans are the plans, and they are being revealed now at the pace of your capacity to receive them. You will not be given the whole staircase at once, but you will be given the next step, and then the next, and the steps will come quickly enough that the direction will become unmistakable. Now, I want to say something about identity, because I believe this is connected to everything else. There is a version of you that existed before the difficult season, a version that had a certain lightness, a version that could dream without immediately calculating the risk, that could hope without the protective layer of cynicism that develops after enough disappointment, that could enter a new relationship, a new opportunity, a new season without bracing for the moment it would fall apart. You may have thought that version of you was gone, replaced by someone more guarded, someone more realistic, someone who learned to manage expectations to avoid the pain of being wrong. And honestly, that protection served a purpose. I am not here to criticize the walls you built. You built them because you needed them, because the alternative, remaining fully open through every season of loss, was not survivable. The walls kept you functional. The managed expectations kept you moving. The protective cynicism kept you from being destroyed by each successive disappointment. But I want to tell you something. The version of you that could dream freely, hope recklessly, believe without calculation, that version is not gone. It has been protected. God tucked it away so the hard season could not touch it. So it would survive intact, so that when this season ended, you would find it waiting for you, not diminished, not damaged, but preserved. Like a photograph kept safe in a fireproof box while everything around it burned. When you enter this next chapter, you are not going to have to rebuild your capacity to believe from scratch. You are going to rediscover that it was never destroyed. And it will feel like returning to something familiar, like coming home to a version of yourself you thought you had lost permanently. That homecoming is part of the restoration. Not just the external provision, the resources, the open doors, the answered prayers, the internal restoration. The return of the version of you that could engage with life without bracing for impact, that is being given back. And when it returns, you will notice it in small moments first. A morning when you wake up and the first thought that arrives is not dread. A conversation where you find yourself laughing in a way that is not managed, not performed for an audience, but real. A moment of hope that surfaces without your permission, hope for something specific that you had stopped allowing yourself to want. And instead of pushing it back down, you find yourself letting it stay. Those small moments are the early signs. The first green breaking through after the long winter. Do not dismiss them. Do not explain them away as coincidence or emotional fluctuation. They are the beginning of the restoration announcing itself. The dreamer is waking up. The believer is returning. The version of you that could love without calculation is coming home. There is one more thing I need to say before we close, about the people who made it harder. Not just the ones who left, the ones who stayed and said things, the ones who offered explanations for your struggle that located the problem inside you, who suggested that if your faith were stronger, things would be different, that if you prayed differently, believed differently, lived differently, the outcome would be different. Who turned your season into evidence of something lacking in you. I want to address that directly, because I believe some of you are still carrying the weight of those words, carrying them in a place you rarely acknowledge, letting them inform, in quiet ways, how you approach God. What if they were right? What if the delay really is about something in me? What if I am the variable that is holding this up? I want to release you from that question tonight. The delay was not punishment. The silence was not indictment. The long waiting was not evidence of insufficient faith. Job's friends said the same thing to him. They were articulate. They were theological. They sounded certain. And God was angry with them, not with Job. With the ones who looked at a suffering person and decided the suffering was earned. Your suffering was not earned. Your delay was not deserved. Your silence from heaven was not a signal that you needed to be more. It was the foundation phase, the preparation phase. The 21 days of Daniel fought in a dimension you could not see. And the people who spoke those words over you will watch what comes next and have no explanation for it except the one they did not offer you then. God was always at work, even when it did not look like it, especially when it did not look like it. Let me close with this. There is a phrase that has become almost cliché in spiritual circles, but I want to return it to its original power tonight. The phrase is, God is faithful. It has been said so many times in so many contexts that it has almost lost its edges. It has become smooth from handling, and smooth-edged words do not cut through the layers we have built up. So let me sharpen it. God is faithful means this. Every word he spoke over your life is still active. Every promise that was made has not expired. Every covenant that was established still holds. Not because you performed perfectly, not because your faith was always strong, not because you deserved it, because faithfulness is not a response to performance. Faithfulness is a quality of character. God cannot be unfaithful any more than the sun can be cold. It is not in his nature. What he said, he will do. What he promised, he will bring. What he started, he will finish. And what he started in you is not finished, not even close. You have been in the building phase, the preparation phase, the underground, invisible, confusing, sometimes painful phase where nothing looks like it is happening, but everything is being prepared. That phase is ending. What comes next will be visible. What comes next will be measurable. What comes next will be the kind of evidence that does not require explanation, that speaks for itself to everyone who has been watching your life. The private tears are about to produce a public testimony, and the testimony is going to be so specific, so precisely matched to the details of what you went through, that the only explanation will be God. Not luck, not timing, not your own ingenuity. God. The God who saw you in private, who recorded what you could not record, who held what you could not hold, who believed in you when you could barely believe in yourself. That God is the one who is moving in your life right now. And he finishes what he starts. Say this with me, out loud, wherever you are. I am not forgotten. What God spoke over my life is still true. The private tears were not wasted. The waiting was not abandonment. The silence was not absence. I release every word spoken over me that confused my season with my identity. I release the agreement I made with the idea that this is just how things are for me. I receive the restoration that has been prepared for me. I receive the return on every seed I planted in tears. I receive the version of myself that was kept safe through the hard season, the dreamer, the believer, the one who could hope without bracing. I declare that what was dormant is bursting. I declare that what was recorded is being answered. I declare that what was invested is producing a return. I step into what is next without the weight of what is behind me. And I trust the God who was faithful in the dark, to be faithful in what is coming. In Jesus' name, amen. Chosen one. If this message found you at the right moment, if something I described tonight named what you have been living through in a way that felt too specific, to be coincidence, leave a comment with the words, "Every tear counted." Let it be written. Let there be a record of the moment you received what heaven has been holding for you. Subscribe, because what was spoken tonight is a beginning. The foundation message leads to the building message. The word over the private season leads to the word over the public breakthrough. Do not miss what comes next, and find the person who came to your heart while you were listening. You know who they are. They are in the private season right now. Still crying tears they think no one sees. Still praying prayers they have almost stopped expecting to be answered. Still carrying the version of themselves that barely survived the last disappointment into the next one. Send this to them, not because it will fix everything, because it will tell them that someone sees. And sometimes knowing you are seen is what keeps you standing long enough to receive what was coming for you all along. Go now, chosen one. Go knowing that you are seen, every part of you, every private moment, every tear, every prayer that trailed off into silence. Every morning you collected yourself in the car. Every night you held yourself together until you were alone enough to fall apart. All of it seen, recorded, preserved. being answered with the specificity of a God who was not looking at you from a distance, but was present in every one of those moments, closer than the silence suggested, more attentive than the quiet implied, more moved by your broken prayers than by anyone else's polished ones. He loves you. Not the performance, not the best version, not the you that has it together. You, the real one, the private one, the one who is reading this right now with something that feels like hope beginning to stir in a place that had gotten very quiet. That stirring is not wishful thinking. That is the seed beginning to burst. The covering has been pulled back. The light is reaching what was dormant, and what was dormant is alive. It always was. Go receive it. Amen.